I am because you are. We don't exist in a vacuum. So this concept of I am because you are really applies in business. It can be extremely rewarding and fulfilling to see the success and to see the people succeed and to be able to harness the energy of 2,700 people. I think every leader should have a goal as to how do they make themselves redundant. How do you build the business in a way that you can hand over the reins in a beautiful transition? It's kind of a gift if you run a software company and there's like deep passion about the product. Between 2019 and 2024, through pandemic, through restructuring, through all sorts of things, the engagement score, people engagement score in the company went up 10 percentage points. I strongly believe in you get the people dynamic right, the company will deliver great things. And, if you look at the performance of Unit4 now, it is delivering phenomenal things. And I don't think we could have done it without that focus on people in the organization. We really design and think about our HR policies. And I had a phenomenal HR leader from this perspective of we trust our people. It's amazing to me how companies are struggling to find the balance over return to work. We found that balance quite easily. There's always some sort of question mark on the trust when you read some of these policies. And I think that we've really broken away from that at Unit4, and that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. The thing which is most important in creating this model of kind of pervasive trust through the organization is your middle tier leaders need to be good leaders. If you've got leaders who avoid the difficult conversations with their people, then it's really hard to make this model work. We put a lot of focus on people in the organization who lead people and developing them and giving them the right tools. That is critical because you can't change culture. You can change behavior. And if you change enough behaviors in the right way, the output will be a change of culture. And the end result is a culture which got stronger and stronger as measured by people engagement. If you have leaders who are stuck and not willing to shift to the behavior framework or the trust framework you're trying to build, change them. Even if they're good performers, there's nothing more damaging to a business than the toxic high performer. You have to get rid of the toxic high performer faster than you get rid of the non-toxic low performer. Dealing with that crisis, I think the way Unit4's people rallied around it and dealt with it was absolutely amazing to watch. We never had a COVID war room. Never. In terms of how we describe things and talked about things. Nothing in life has meaning till you give it meaning. Too often you see CEOs who are burning out. And the reason they're burning out is because they're choosing to give meaning to everything. And you can't be effective like that. You've got to find that place of grounding, and you've got to make time to do that because it actually makes you a better leader. You need to schedule your health time.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A core hypothesis we often visit on this podcast is that when the humanness of our people is the foundational component of our business, we create high-performing organizations that stand the test of time. To bring us a deeply experiential perspective to this idea, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Mike Ettling is the Executive Chairman of SYSPRO, a global leader in digital transformation, and the former CEO of Unit4, a global ERP company with 2,700 employees. Mike is an investor, a builder of world-class teams, a champion of diversity, and a continuous learner. From his first leadership role in the Boy Scouts to executive positions in the tech industry, his career has revolved around elevating, engaging, and enabling people. Mike is also a proud father, a Liverpool supporter, and a South African. I am honored to have you on this podcast, Mike.
Thanks, Bhavesh. Great to meet you.
Nice meeting you as well. Where are you at right now? Are you in the U.S.?
Right now I'm in London.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So, but I think you took a little bit of a trip, right? Somewhere in Africa, was it?
Yeah, I was down in, as we call it in South Africa, we don't say we go on safari, we say we go to the bush. And I was in the bush for 5 days, decompressing. It's the best place to decompress.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, do you do that often, or is that
I try to. I haven't done it for a few years. It's been pretty hectic,
Yeah.
but it was spectacular, absolutely spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. You look very relaxed. So the bush worked for you.
It did.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And again, I'm honored to have you here. You talk about something called Ubuntu quite often, right? And I'm kind of curious to kind of kick us off here. If you can tell us what Ubuntu is and what it means to you and how it has influenced your leadership style.
Yeah, so it's a South African philosophy of life, which kind of means I am because of you, who you are, sort of thing. And that
I am who you are.
I am because of who you are.
I am because of who you are. Okay.
So, it's not, and it essentially is this principle that, we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist because of people around us, because of, humanity of other people.
Right.
I am because you are, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's originally a Zulu word and comes from the Zulu tribe. But I think it's a very interesting concept, particularly in business, because actually, business is all about relationships. It's all about multiple people engaging. So this concept of I am because you are really applies in business, whether it's teams, whether it's you and the customer, whether it's you and your stakeholders.
Right.
And I think, I just find it a very balanced way of thinking about things, because I am not because I am not because of I am because of you.
Yeah.
We have this podcast because, not because of me, because of you.
Right. And vice versa. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In India, there is a tradition called Namaste, which is Namaste. I bow to that in you, which is the essence of you. And then it's return in kind. Right?
Yeah.
It's
a very similar concept.
It's a very similar concept. You started with Unit for about 5 years ago.
6 years ago, 2019.
Okay. Yeah. And you recently resigned your position and from the CEO role. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I joined Unit4 in 2019 with a, clear mission. It was a company which was struggling back then. Clear mission was to take it on a journey to become a cloud software company from on-premise.
Right.
It had a rich heritage, being a 40-year-old company.
Yeah.
Great product, absolutely great product, specializing in ERP software for services companies.
Right.
And and then we took it on the journey, and we rebuilt it. We took it to the cloud. In 2021, we sold the company from Advent to TA Associates. Mm-hmm. And my view was always that I would not, I would need to get my successor in place before TA does another transaction with it. And we started a process about a year ago to look for build my successor. And we've gone through, I think, a very beautiful transition, if I can use that word, in terms of transitioning to a great leader who succeeded me, Simon Paris. I think there's a perfect fit culturally for Unit4, and we'll take it to even greater things from where it is today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And beautiful is the word you used. I like that. That's a beautiful way to transition. And I might say that probably doesn't happen as often as it should in the industry, where, the transitions are not always smooth and planned out. As you said, you actually came into the position thinking and planning and strategizing that this is how you would set it up. And that's how you would exit the role, right?
And I think for leaders, I think every leader should have a goal as to how do they make themselves redundant.
I love that.
It should almost be a standard goal in any CEO's sort of goals in the sense of how do you build the business in a way that you can hand over the reins in a beautiful transition without there being a hiccup, without there being issues.
Absolutely.
And that's a combination of how do you build your talent? How do you develop talent? How do you look for talent outside?
Sure.
I think every leader has to embrace that concept of, building their succession. Because I think that keeps companies vibrant and keeps vitality in companies.
Yeah. And you also said something else that was beautiful, which is that you're saying that I think that the company is going to continue to succeed, and it's going to go beyond what you set it out to be in the marketplace, right? It's going to succeed beyond what where you brought it.
Yeah, and I strongly believe that, and I strongly believe in this principle, because I always say to people, when you come and work for a company, the days of 40-year careers are over.
Sure.
I have huge respect for people who've done that.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen that often anymore. And I think the key thing is, anyone is going into a company, the point they leave, can they honestly look back and say, I've added value. I've left this place a better place than what it was. And I've grown. I've grown as an individual. I think that's also a really important concept.
Yeah.
And I think if you can answer those two questions positively, then it's a healthy and great way to transition. And I can honestly say, I think I've left Unit4, in a significantly better place than where it was. And I've grown as a leader during my tenure at Unit4, and I've learned a lot in different dimensions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I strongly believe now that Unit4 will continue to grow and to be successful. And, that to me is also part of the success, is seeing my successor be wildly successful in their role.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And on that point, going back a little bit, ERP for our listeners is enterprise resource planning software, right? So this is in bigger organizations, probably mid-sized to big, a few thousand people, a few hundred to a few thousand people.
Well, no, it's ERP applies across the spectrum. So you could argue that if you're doing your personal accounts on Quicken, that's your ERP,
right?
That's your individual ERP.
Sure.
Through to, SAP, Oracle on very big,
all the way to
organizations. We used to specialize in mid-market professional services businesses.
Sure.
So anything where the R is not a widget, but a person.
Resource.
A resource.
Oh, okay. Yes. So the enterprise resource planning resource there is a person, a human being.
Yeah.
And all right.
Whereas the other company I'm chairing, SYSPRO, they focus on manufacturing ERP.
Right.
So the resource is a widget or something which is being manufactured.
Yeah. Going back to your start with Unit4 as a leader, could you give us some idea of what were the circumstances in which you were involved, and where was Unit4 at the time that you joined?
Yeah, so Unit4 had been purchased by Advent, been taken private, was listed on the Dutch Stock Exchange. It was taken private in 2012, I think. Maybe a bit later, 2013. And it had gone through private equity ownership. And an exit was attempted in early 2018, which didn't succeed. So they weren't able to conclude a transaction. Right. And then I, having had a long relationship with Advent as a private equity firm, got involved to look at the company and come up with a point of view on what could be done. And that point of view turned into, would you like to do it? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think what I saw in the company was two things. One, I really liked the strap line, which was Unit4 in business for people. So we had software not for manufacturing or warehouse management, but software for people-centric businesses.
Right.
So having come out of SuccessFactors, which was an HR tech company, which I ran for SAP, that was quite appealing to still stay more in a people-centric kind of end user. And secondly, I really liked the product. I thought the product was really good. The organization, the tech guys were doing something pretty unique around migrating the product to the cloud. many people either rebuild the product from scratch or they just lift and shift it, and it ends up being a single tenant product in the cloud. Our guys were figuring out how to kind of almost replumb the product, change the plumbing from single tenant to multi-tenant, but not have to rewrite 20 years of functionality.
Right.
So I thought that was really unique and interesting to get to a multi-tenant world. And, and there was a huge commitment. I remember going around and meeting people in the company, and people would, complain about the back office not working and sales commissions being paid late and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the conversation, everyone would talk about, but it's an amazing product.
Right.
And I think, it's kind of a gift if you run a software company and there's like deep, deep, deep passion about the product. Because too often I've seen software companies where the sales field will just throw the product under the bus, very often. We didn't have that at Unit4. So all of that was really what attracted me to it. And then the fact that I think Advent are great investors and great shareholders. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. You mentioned that people, right? The people is your passion, it seems to me, because it's a theme that comes up right from the beginning, right? We started talking about Ubuntu and people. So, and the software itself is about people, but also there were quite a few people working within the organization, about 2,700 people when he took the leadership helm of the company, right? And so what I would like to kind of get into a little bit is, what was your vision of the people within the company, but also how the ERP software, the technology piece, how does that empower people? What does it do for people?
So I think two very big separate topics. I'll talk about the vision inside. So one of the things I am a big believer in is that if you look at software companies, it's almost a trite statement, but their biggest asset is people. You don't produce great software unless you got highly engaged, highly motivated people. And the great software companies who've achieved extraordinary value have all done extraordinary things with their people experience in the business. And I strongly believed in that. And I felt, coming into Unit4, we needed to start sending a very different message around how important our people are in the organization. And I remember one of the first things I said I wanted to do, which was quite interesting given we are like an 80% European-centric company, was I said to my head of HR then that I want to abolish leave, annual vacation. And because we don't need to have it. Let people take what they need. Because we trust them to get the job done. So take whatever you want. You still got to apply for your leave online because people have got to manage who's present. But you don't need to be constrained by 20 days a year or kind of some nonsense. And I got all the reasons why you can't do it in Europe, because Europe has statutory leave and fixed periods. And then my general counsel actually said, well, I think there's a way we can do this. We just need to talk about it differently. And it's not about let's abolish leave. It's about let's remove the caps on your statutory leave. So you have unlimited leave. You take what you need. You take your statutory first. If you need more time, you can take it. So that I did that very early in 2019. And it actually had huge payback in come 2020. And we had COVID and lockdowns and people at home and kids at home and all this stuff. And I remember being on CEO calls, multiple CEOs talking about dynamics and how to deal with this. And a lot of people were talking, one of the topics was anxiety of your staff. And one of the big anxieties a lot of people were having was staff were anxious over, will I have enough time off, enough PTO? Because, I have to teach my kid, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Will I have enough time? And we never had that anxiety because people knew they could take whatever they needed as long as they got the job done. sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the biggest testament to how this focus, and we've done a lot of other things. We have wellness days 3 times a year where the whole company's off for the day.
Sure.
The biggest testament to the success of this is that between 2019 and 2024, through pandemic, through restructuring, through all sorts of things, the engagement score, people engagement score in the company went up 10 percentage points.
Wow.
From like 70 to the early 80s. So I think I strongly believe in you get the people dynamic right. And the company will deliver great things. And, if you look at the performance of Unit4 now, it is delivering phenomenal things in terms of where it is. And I don't think we could have done it without that focus on people in the organization.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you're a testament to, so as a principle, there's policies. And then there's principle of the inspiration behind those policies, right? So the policy is basically the outward manifestation of what we believe to be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a great point because it's the mindset that we come to the leadership with. And the mindset, what I'm hearing from you is that your mindset, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that people come first in a way, right? And then if you take care of the people, then all the other things that the company needs to succeed at and excel at will take care of itself. And at the same time, I also have to believe, Mike, that there is a bit of a balancing act here. In social leadership, for example, if you look at Nelson Mandela or Gandhi or Lincoln, right? Some of the examples, there are so many of those examples where of Dr. King, where there's a movement and there's a cause, and the cause is for the people. The people are the end result of or happiness or the right thing for the people is the end result of the entire movement. But leading a company is a little bit different in the sense that there are constraints, right? So if my cause is only for the people, then there is this risk that people need autonomy. People have aspirations. People have goals. There are things that they want to do that may not necessarily fit with what the organization wants to do or wants them to do. So how do you navigate that tightrope, if you will?
I think one word: trust.
Okay.
I think this whole thing about put your people first. I mean, every company says it. You can go read websites. You'll find it somewhere on the website. We put our people first.
Yeah.
And then you go read their HR policies. And it's always an interesting exercise to find the company who says they put their people first and then ask for the HR manual and read the HR manual as if you were an employee and ask yourself, do I feel offended by that or not?
Yeah. Right.
Many times you got HR policies which are quite offensive because it's saying to me, you're a crook, you're a cheat, we don't trust you.
Right.
We need these HR policies.
Yeah.
And I think we can honestly say at Unit4, we really design and think about our HR policies. And I had a phenomenal HR leader who, from this perspective of we trust our people.
Sure.
We trust you to do the right thing. We trust you to get stuff done. Now, yes, you got to have administration.
Yeah.
And you got to track time, people are off, etc. But we trust you to take what you need and get the job done. And I think there's so many, a classic example of this, which is going on right now. It's amazing to me how companies are struggling to find the balance over return to work. We found that balance quite easily. And, in terms of how people, when they go back into the office and actually they go based on need. They go based on, we need to be with colleagues. We need to engage. We have never put in a policy of you got to be back 3 days a week or you got to be back Tuesday, Wednesday, sort of thing.
Sure.
I mean, I see companies still struggling with this. And then I see companies putting in policies where they are mandating certain days or they are making you fill out your work from home requests as if it's a leave request to get permission to work from home. And it does truly amaze me, because those sort of behaviors almost always stem from somebody saying, "Oh, we can't trust the people to come. Why aren't they in the office? I don't trust them that they're working at home.
Yeah,
So,
sure. Yeah,
let's bring them in
yeah,
2 days a week," kind of thing.
yeah.
There's
Right.
always some sort of question mark on the trust when you read some of these policies.
Yeah.
And I think that we've really broken away from that at Unit4, and that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of in terms of how we've built the company.
Sure. And Mike, this is fascinating to me, because trust is, you're running the 2,700 people and trusting the entire group. I mean, there's a lot at stake, lots of money at stake. Customers they need to be served, and they need to be happy, and all those things. And it's, one might think that that's a risky thing to do, and yet you've done it. So the question I have for you is was there already a bit of a groundwork that was done before you took over the helm, the leadership role? Or did you have to actually do some work to engender this culture of trust?
Look, I think I inherited a business with fundamentally good people who wanted to definitely do the right thing, and I think who lacked leadership. But the thing which is most important in creating this model of kind of pervasive trust through the organization is your middle tier leaders need to be good leaders.
Absolutely.
Because there will always be people who will take advantage of the system.
Sure.
If you have leaders who are strong and good and are capable, are comfortable when somebody does take advantage, sitting them down and saying, "Well, that's not cricket. That's not how we engage or behave at Unit4. Think about this." Then it works. It absolutely works. If you've got leaders who avoid the difficult conversations with their people, then it's really hard to make this model work, because by definition, this model requires difficult conversations to happen.
Yes.
Because people will, take a chance or not toe the line in terms of the behavior you want, not the rules, but the behavior you want.
Sure.
So I think that's really key. So working on the middle tier leadership, engaging what I called the extended leadership team, which was my directs, everyone below my directs. It's been very key in our business. We have regular meetings with that group. We have regular Teams calls with that group. We have regular leadership kind of lessons for that group. We put a lot of focus on people in the organization who lead people and developing them and giving them the right tools. That is critical to kind of making this, I trust everyone to get the job done, sort of culture work in an organization.
And this is where the rubber meets the road in a way, right? So what part of that, just so that, from our listeners are, sometimes vice president level, VP and manager and team leaders, what portion of that is listening, and what percentage of that is kind of talking? And I heard this funny term some time ago. Someone said culture deck, as if it's a PowerPoint presentation that you can flip by people and then you can install culture like some kind of a software onto people's mind. That's not how it works, right? So what's the trick there? Is how much of that is listening, how much that is understanding, how much of that is educating or explaining, or those kinds of things?
So I think, my philosophy on culture is nothing more than the output of a series of behaviors. So when people talk about we're going to change the culture of the organization, I think it's the most overused, misused expression in business. We're going to change the culture. Because you can't change culture.
You can't,
You can change behavior.
Okay.
And if you change enough behaviors in the right way, the output will be a change of culture. As such.
Yes, that is very interesting.
I have that's kind of my framework for thinking about culture and what culture is. So you've got to then identify the behaviors which is driving your culture, and what do you want those behaviors, and how do you change those behaviors, and how do you make a difference with those behaviors. And you can change behaviors in various ways: leadership discussions, compensation plans. is a huge way and tool in business to change behavior, as opposed, and not just reward people, but to fundamentally change how you want behavior to be different. So I think that's how I think about it, and I focused on it always. It's like, what are the series of what's the universe of behaviors we're seeing? What are the ones we want to keep? What are the ones we want to change? And then how do you use compensation, leadership engagement, to shift those kind of behaviors? I think too often in companies, the function of HR has kind of setting HR policy and practice has got divorced from actually what are the underlying behaviors you want to change.
100%.
Like, we need this as a policy. We got to have this as a policy in HR. Well, no. Does that drive or enable or change a behavior? And why do you want that policy? So I think that's really important. I think we at Unit4, we really got that right. We cracked that kind of problem around getting HR policy, behavior change, and shifting the way we want it. And the end result is a culture which got stronger and stronger as measured by people engagement.
People engagement, right? Yes, And there are so many different ways that we can take this conversation. I know we have limited time, Mike. And so that the engagement piece is one piece, and then HR piece. And I want to get back to HR a little bit. What I've heard is that, and what I witness often in organizations, is that HR become the designated driver of culture change. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that is not necessarily a very effective way to do it. It has to come from the leadership, and then the leadership can collaborate what they need to do with the HR to have the right kind of conversation, the right kind of policy in place.
I totally agree. I think too often, again, you see leadership abdicate the responsibility of being a leader to HR.
Right, exactly.
And it is absolutely fatal when that happens. HR is there to enable leaders. It's there to give them tools. It's there to give them guidance.
Exactly.
It's there to give them frameworks. It's there to, create community amongst leaders. But leaders need to lead. And, I think we put a lot of effort into that. As talked about what we call the extended leadership team, my directs and people who were leading people in the organization.
Sure.
You put a lot of focus on that. You start shifting the organization.
Right.
And, I think for me, when I walk in or look at an organization from outside in, it's a very quick kind of health check on the organization as to, are leaders like abdicating responsibility to HR? Well, HR can do that for me. HR can do that. HR must do the performance review. HR must do that.
You're right.
Then you've got a problem if that's happening.
Can you give us an example of the time when, let's pretend that, and you don't have to name names, but you have a director and this person, they are basically saying, okay, this is not going to work. I can't trust people. I've got 6 people, 60 people, whatever number, working for me. And if I trust them to do ABC, XYZ from home, and if I give them all this, leave, and, that's too much empowerment. Did that ever happen, number one? And if it did happen, how did you handle that? Because I'm sure people who, they deal with this all the time within organizations. So
it never really happened. Never really happened with my direct reports at all.
Sure.
I'm sure there was some incidents of it down, in the organization. But I actually think we, as an organization, were kind of, it was almost like we had the antibodies to deal with those dynamics, that virus, so to speak. Because I think what happens if the rest of the organization is on the right track, and then somebody is there and behaving in an opposite way to the culture, their own people reject it. And very quickly it gets flushed out. So, I'm sure we had people down the line who were like, found the shift kind of hard.
Yeah.
But I would say majority of people embraced it. And then if, my other advice to a leader is if you have leaders who are stuck and not willing to shift to the behavior framework or the trust framework you're trying to build, change them.
Sure.
Even if they're good performers.
Yeah.
There's nothing more damaging to a business than the toxic high performer.
Right.
And in fact, you have to get rid of the toxic high performer faster than you get rid of the non-toxic low performer.
I absolutely love that.
Because you can solve, you can manage, you can help people perform better.
Yeah.
It's very hard to detox people.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Very difficult to reform people, right? But you can change their if they don't have a skill set, we can give those skill set. If they don't have the competence, we can train them, whatever, send them training, whatever, help them get. Great point. Moving forward, where do you think Unit4 can go from here? If you could wave the magic wand, what's its potential from your perspective? Of course, from where you stand right now.
Well, I think Unit4 is, I think it's the leading provider of ERP software in the mid-market for professional services businesses.
Yeah.
But it's a 500 million euro revenue company. It's only getting started. It's only starting to warm up. That market is huge, absolutely huge. We operate in 20 countries. There's 100 countries around the world. So the growth potential for Unit4 is just unlimited. And it's got a very unique positioning in its market segment.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were to sit down, which seems like you have a communication with the next leadership of the company, and if you were to tell them one thing that you don't want them to change, if there was one advice you can say, change whatever you want, right? But don't change this one thing. What would that be?
Don't change the people dynamic.
Okay.
Don't change the people dynamic, which was being created from this fundamental belief of we trust you to get the job done.
Yeah.
Don't change that.
Don't change that. Yes, I love that. And hopefully we'll have them listen to to our episode if they're not listening to you directly, right? But yeah, maybe I said too much already there. Going back to Mike, I speak with leaders and business owners and founders a lot. And, one thing, for someone who is looking in from the outside, someone who is leading companies, building companies, founding companies and taking them to a certain level of success, it looks like a very glamorous thing to do, right? But when you look at it from the inside out, it's not always moonlight and roses. And I kind of like to pose this question that, has there ever been a time in your career where you thought it was a teaching moment? It was a difficult, and I think you said in your bio that you love to learn and grow. Was there ever a moment in your career when you thought that it was difficult? I mean, it was really difficult, like the dark night of the soul type of a situation.
Yeah.
If you could share some of that.
Yeah, I think I think in any sort of career and CEO role, I would not choose the word glamorous.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the word I resonate on is the word rewarding. Rewarding and fulfilling.
Yes.
So I think being a CEO and having, leading a successful organization, can be extremely rewarding and fulfilling.
Sure.
To see the success and to see the people succeed and to be able to harness the energy of 2,700 people, in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the things which drives me is that sense of fulfillment and reward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm choosing in the next phase of my career to try and help other people experience that, other leaders experience that by taking on more chair roles,
right,
in terms of chairing companies and enabling other CEOs to try and be successful and get that same experience. There's been a couple moments, I remember my first CEO role, and I came out of a big corporate, went into my first CEO role, and I had all the "this is how you do it" kind of mindset, and I was failing in the role. I wasn't engaging the people. The people weren't following me. It was really challenging. And I remember spending time with a coach and my then boss, who was like, "Well, the coach said." And he made me read a book, which is probably the best business book. I advise everyone to read it. It's this book, which is "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And it's all about how what made you successful up to a point is not going to make you successful for the next part of the journey.
Sure.
And the ability to be successful is driven by your ability to change and adapt in the next part.
Yeah, sure.
And that was very much the case, like going from being a divisional president in a multinational to being a CEO of a private equity business needs very different skills. And you need to major on, maybe the underlying skills are the same, but you need to major on the skills differently.
Sure.
And relationship building and bringing the team along become even more important than, say, president in a big division in a company.
Sure.
And but fortunately I had a very good boss who, was also mentoring me and gave me a lot of advice, and he wanted me to succeed.
Yeah.
So he helped coach me and help me through that moment and that sort of process.
Sure.
And then, of course, the other time frame was, clearly 2020 was probably the most interesting, challenging year in business. With pandemic and everything that went on. And I think the other, the big learning for me was, I was intrigued being on a lot of these calls with other CEOs.
Yeah.
And there was almost like a sense of bravado. CEOs would come on the call and say, "We let 30% of our people go.
Yeah.
And we've set up a COVID war room." And I sat back and said, "Well, why are you setting up a COVID war room? Why are you even calling it that? It's not a war."
Yeah. Right.
And secondly, why are you proud that you're letting 30% of your people go?
Right.
So one of the big things we accomplished was we said, what are the holy grails we don't want to touch? And as we get through COVID, we started out by saying, we're not going to have two budgets.
Yeah.
So some companies say, well, let's have a COVID budget and our normal budget.
Yeah.
We said, we just have the budget.
Yeah.
And we recognize it's going to be harder to get to.
Sure.
What do we have to do to get to it?
Yeah.
And then we said, in that, what do we have to do? Are there any holy grails? And there were three holy grails. We don't want to make anyone redundant. We don't want to cut marketing spend.
Right.
And we don't want to stop accruing for 100% bonuses. And people came up with plans. So once you had those holy grails and you had the thing, everyone rallied around what are the plans now to still achieve budget.
Sure.
And in 2020, we hit budget. We didn't make anyone redundant. We kept spending on marketing and we paid out almost 100% bonuses to everyone.
There you go.
And then we sold the company successfully in Q1 of 2021.
Yes.
So I think having that very clear kind of perspective and vision and dealing with that crisis, I think the way Unit4's people rallied around it and dealt with it was absolutely amazing to watch. We would have, every day we would have teams, either gym teams, yoga teams, this, but it wasn't outside people coming and doing the classes. It was our own people.
Wow.
Who were volunteering to do a yoga class or to do this class or to do this stuff. So it was a very kind of sobering period around, because on the one hand, you're looking at what's going on and saying, is normality ever going to come back? Yeah. On the other hand, you're seeing an organization absolutely rally around their colleagues and being wildly successful without letting people go, without,
Right.
all the negative things. We never had a COVID war room, never, in terms of how we describe things and talked about things.
Yeah.
So those are two moments in my career which sort of stand out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing those. And Mike, one of the things that I often observe and witness that in my own life, it's also true, is that as we go through life and careers, we end up being not the same person that we started with, right? We change. And sometimes we change through these kinds of experience that you described. And sometimes we just change as the nature of things go, right? So, what if there, Mike today and Mike in Boy Scouts, how are you different today than you were? And if it's too far back to go, pick a time. That is,
Well, jokingly, I could say today I can't tie all the knots I could tie with ropes back then in Boy Scouts.
Okay.
But I think, what I think is different is, I think somewhere along the way, I really sort of came onto this philosophy about business, which I remember going on a leadership course once, and it was all based around Martin Heidegger, the psychologist's work.
Right.
And there was this interesting philosophy which says, nothing in life has meaning till you give it meaning.
Yeah.
And I think that philosophy has served me extremely well through my business career, because quite frankly, you could stand there and start swearing at me.
Right.
And I can get all worked up and uptight, but I'm choosing to give that meaning and reaction to what you're doing. I could also choose to just ignore it and not get worked up about it.
Right.
And I think when you realize that and you start thinking about business in that context, there's a lot of things in business where you can get worked up over, but you can also choose not to. And often things resolve themselves.
Yes.
If you just let them resolve themselves. So choosing what you want to react to, what you want to give meaning to, I think is a very important skill as a CEO and as a leader. And I see, and it's not often developed well enough, because too often you see CEOs who are burning out. And the reason they're burning out is because they're choosing to give meaning to everything. Which hits their way. And you can't be effective like that. So that's kind of philosophy. If I go back, I think, in my early days of career and life, everything was like, fight every battle, which, comes your way. And then I started realizing, well, actually, and it's not just about stuff you have to do. It's not about your to-do list. It's just about your emotional state of being. Do you choose, somebody says something, or sponsor says something, or stakeholder says something, or client does something. How do you choose to react to that? Which affects how you end up manifesting yourself as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And by the same token, the flip side of the coin, everything is changing in the world. And we probably are changing at faster rate than we ever have in the history of mankind, the history of the known history of the mankind. So what is your strategy, or what is your place, metaphorical or literal? Well, how do you ground yourself? Well, how do you go to the unchanging? And what is that? If you can grasp that, how do you ground yourself? Yeah.
My grounding, being a South African and growing up in South Africa, is to go to the bush. 5 days in the bush, and you kind of realize the fundamentals and basics of life. And the circle of life, and you come out very grounded. We throw a lot of unnecessary nonsense and complexity into modern day life, which is essentially not how we designed as human beings. So for me, you've got to have for me, it's the bush. I think every leader and CEO has got to find their sort of place of grounding.
Yeah.
Some people might think it's the beach, but
Yeah.
you've got to find that place of grounding, and you've got to make time
Sure.
to spend, to be there,
Sure.
to do that,
Yeah.
because it actually makes you a better leader.
Yes, absolutely.
And one of the interesting things, I was talking to a leader the other day, and one of the things they're saying is that they're really struggling. They got so much on their plate. They got so much to do. As a CEO, they're worried about their health, etc. And I said, yeah, but you need to schedule your health time.
Sure.
And I said,
Yeah.
and don't do it privately in your diary. Make it public. So
Yeah.
put in your diary that you're going to gym at
Right.
that time, and lunchtime or whatever.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Your reports will then see it in your diary, and they will start doing it. And then their reports will do it. And next thing, you got a company which is comfortable
Absolutely
going to gym and putting it in their diary. And you got a healthier company which delivers better and performs better.
Exactly.
So I think the big thing I always say to people is schedule your wellness.
Yeah.
Put it in your diary.
Schedule your wellness. Yes, I love it. Yeah. And Mike, what is there's the externals of going to the bush, going to the beach, or going to get a workout. Is there an internal representation of that grounding? What is the place? I don't know if that's even the right question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a place inside that you go to find that grounding? And what is that place? If you can kind of try to verbalize that.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things of constantly catching myself when I'm about to react and saying, is this reaction appropriate, or am I giving the meaning to this? Or should I be giving meaning to this? Is it worth giving meaning to? So constantly trying to catch yourself in that mode so you don't end up giving meaning to everything and then getting really worked up on stuff.
Sure.
Music for me is a very important part. Take time. Okay. I take time to listen to music and just, often when I'm on flights, I would rather listen to music than watch a movie.
Sure. Any particular kind of music?
I like everything, from jazz to bluegrass to classical, I like everything, right down to black coffee, is the South African DJ.
All right.
So, I like, so you just listen to music, for me, just clears your mind and lets your mind wander, and ramble. But I think mind rambling is really important, if you can call it that. Where you create the space for your mind to ramble. And it's surprising, I think most CEOs would admit that their good ideas don't come when they're in the office dealing with routine. Their good ideas come when they're in the bush, when they're rambling on an airplane, or those kind of environments. You suddenly get the aha moment.
Right. Going forward, what's the vision for SYSPRO, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I think SYSPRO is, it's an extraordinary product. It's in the manufacturing space, they call MRP, Manufacturing Resource Planning. Very successful company, originated out of South Africa, but most of its customers are global, outside South Africa. Advent acquired it with a very clear thesis that this can be a platform to really build a strong mid-market MRP company. In particular types of manufacturing. Right. So, my sort of excitement and vision and mission there is to really enable that leadership team to really be successful. It's a great leadership team. They know how to execute. They don't necessarily know what good looks like on a global stage. And bringing that to them, and with their ability to execute, we think it's going to be a very, very successful company and investment. And the goal is to do more like that, is to find companies where I can, build a portfolio of 3 or 4 chairmanships and bring that, what I've experienced and gone through, bring that to bear to make others equally successful.
Absolutely. Sure. Thank you so much, Mike. And how do we get hold of you, or how do people get hold of you? What's at the top of your mind? What are you reaching out to people for, and what are the ways for people to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, and happy for people to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So, Mike, this was a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your leadership philosophy, and I think it's inspiring. I think we have a lot of things that people can learn from the episode. And once again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great.
How was that? Was it okay?
I thought that was great. It flowed really nicely. How did you find it?
Oh, it was great. Yeah. It was excellent. Yeah. So once I find my place, it's the best part of doing what I do is just kind of flow with the question and, just listen well on what you're saying, and then just kind of find the thread. And you're a pro at this, so, you have a lot to share. The only struggle that I have is which one to follow, because each thread can go and open up so many different rabbit holes. So, we can be doing this for 3 hours, and I know we have time constraints. So one thing I like to ask, Mike, is what was it like to be on the other side, as I'm asking this question? Because, this is something that I need to I'm also learning always, and always trying to grow. So do you have any feedback on what could have been done better?
No, I think it was actually I think you're actually really, really good, because I think your point about how you pick up on nuggets and then expand on it and ask the next question. And I think the thing which I liked about the discussion is, it felt like I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to talk for an hour. We talked for an hour.
Yes, we did.
And it was like, it just kind of flowed.
Yes.
It wasn't like, oh, what's the next question? It felt like we had a conversation for an hour. Yeah. And I think that's great. Just keep doing that.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking your time. And I wish you all the best.